Breaking news for LSU football. Mason Taylor has made his decision about his future. The junior tight end will forego his senior season and enter the NFL draft. This is not a surprise. Mason Taylor told us in a media availability back in October at some point that he felt like he was physically ready to play in the NFL. You understand that I don't think he was going to be kicked out the door to the NFL with his family situation, but he felt like he was ready to go, and he's made that decision, and it's not a shock. This is a guy who showed up with Brian Kelly in a tight end room that was pretty much empty. Eric Gilbert had moved on the year before. Cole Taylor had a shoe thrown. He moved on, and they didn't really have a tight end. Jack Mashburn was trying to help him out. He was a high school quarterback. And you understood that Brian Kelly really values the tight end position and has that as a key pillar in his offenses over the years. And so it was basically kind of like Mason Taylor was the guy, and he did not start the opener against Florida State. But after that game, he started every game of his LSU career. And he was ridiculously productive. In fact, the most productive tight end in the history of LSU football. He leaves LSU as the all-time leader in tight end receptions, as the all-time leader in tight end yards. He caught 129 passes for 1,308 yards. He scored 6 touchdowns, and of course, most famously, made the catch to beat Alabama back in his freshman season of 2022 with a 2-point conversion in overtime. He was fantastic, and I think is primed for a long career in the NFL. He's filled out on that frame. He's 6'5", 255 pounds. He runs certainly well enough. He's got great hands, has made tough catches over the years time and time again, especially on third downs. I think about the 4th down catch that he made, 2 of them, but the one that was contested along the sideline against Ole Miss on that final drive that was awesome. And he was a security blanket for Garrett Nussmeier over the course of this season. A career-best 55 catches for Mason Taylor, a career-best 546 yards for Mason Taylor this year. Also made a touchdown catch in that game against Alabama 2 years ago in the second half in the back of the end zone, which was a huge play in that game. So congratulations to Mason Taylor on a phenomenal career, great representation of LSU. This is a guy who they sent out for player interviews almost every week. We got to talk to, always nothing but pleasant, and was incredibly productive. So best wishes to him as he enters the NFL draft. What does it mean for LSU? Well, you look at LSU, and obviously Mac Markway left in fall camp, and you've got Kamorian Pimpton, who made 2 nice catches in the game against Oklahoma back on Saturday. You've got Trey'Dez Green, who's an immense talent, but you moved to wide receiver midway through the season as well. So you are incredibly thin there with only 2 guys on scholarship, and neither one of them are accomplished blockers in any way. So this is a non-negotiable for LSU at this point. You absolutely must go into the transfer portal and get a 255-pound tight end that can block SEC edges. It's non-negotiable. J.D. LaFleur looks like a heck of a player. It's one of the top tight ends in the country. He's got great bloodlines. His dad, David, was a great player at LSU and became a pick to the Cowboys and was a productive player in Dallas in the NFL. And he's got a big frame. He's 6'7", 245 pounds. I don't want him being thrust into that role immediately as a freshman. That's asking too much. Mason Taylor did it, but it's asking too much. I'm not saying you got to go get a first-team All-American tight end. You don't have to go get Brock Bowers from the Raiders. But you got to go get somebody that can be physical at the point of attack. And the good news is that's not going to cost as much as a quarterback, a number 1 wide receiver, an elite edge rusher, an offensive tackle. Like this is going to be manageable. And it doesn't necessarily have to come from the elite ranks. You've got some guys that can help you that are going to get better in terms of blocking. This will be Kamorian Pimpton's 3rd year in the program. Trey'Dez Green is a willing blocker. He's not necessarily an able blocker at this point, but he's going to put some weight on. He's always going to be a guy that plays more in the slot and out at wide, but he fills that position. This is something you've got to have now. And I feel like it doesn't have to come from South Carolina or Georgia or Texas A&M or Oklahoma or, I couldn't even get out of the SEC there. I was just trying to go through all these places, and they were all in the SEC. It doesn't have to come from Michigan or Kansas State. You can find somebody from a lower level that's just big and physical. I'm not asking this guy to come in and catch 55 balls like Mason Taylor. He may catch 4, but he needs to look like Logan Stokes. He needs to look like Chase Claymaugh. He needs to look like one of these big physical tight ends that LSU has had really in the Les Miles era. And you got to make that happen over the next month for sure. It's not like LSU's got tight ends. Like as I mentioned, they've got Kamorian Pimpton, they've got Trey'Dez Green, they've got J.D. LaFleur. You add one more, and I think you're okay at that spot, but it's got to be a specific skill set. So that's where LSU will be. I don't imagine this is a huge surprise to LSU. Mason, and this is guessing, but I feel like I've talked to Mason enough times, like probably 10 over the last 10 weeks, last 15 weeks. I feel like I've talked to him enough times to realize that he's got a really level head on his shoulders, and I don't think this is one where he pulled a fast one at LSU. He probably indicated to LSU weeks ago that this is where this was headed. So I think the staff probably understands this. Slade Nagel, your tight ends coach, has moved on. He's now taken the job there at Houston as the offensive coordinator. So you've got a vacant position coach and a position that needs some attention. So right now, Brian Kelly's probably going to have to spearhead that for the time being to make sure they get that accomplished. You got to fill that position and then make sure you grab one in the transfer portal as far as players go. So Mason Taylor, with the most productive tight end in the history of LSU football, moving on to the National Football League, leaves a little bit of a vacancy there at tight end for the Tigers. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.